Thanks for coming today. I know there's a really bad rainstorm, so that's very cool of you to be here right now. I'm Catie, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And for the past 4 to 5 years, I've been world building in my practice and thinking about inventing and creating new spaces. And today I'm going to talk about my work and my influences, and I'll also talk about my nomadic residency lifestyle and different art-related jobs that I've had. I hope that this is informative for you. I was in your shoes not too long ago, like 3 years ago. So please ask me questions. I hope I can help you answer any questions you have about your future as an artist. I wanted to start off my lecture with this painting that I made when I was in elementary school. I love this painting because it looks a lot like the work that I've been making over the past few years. And I think that it just goes to show that art is full circle. And you can go down these different tangents and explore different things, but you always come back to your intuition and the work that you're supposed to be making. And this was the work that I was making when I was in undergrad at Penn State. My last semester, I made a large body of work. I was using the landscape as a vehicle to learn about painting and learn how to use paint in different ways. And I was making these large atmospheric paintings. The large one is about 8 feet tall, and I wanted it to have a relationship with the viewer, and these purple puffs of paint are supposed to bring the viewer through the painting, almost on this journey. I had the opportunity to study abroad when I was in school, and I was also living in rural Pennsylvania, going on a lot of hikes and taking photographs. And these images became resource photos in the studio. I would print them out and hang them in the studio and combine elements and pieces of them to make these invented landscapes. And this has become a huge part of my practice. I was also looking at works by Andrei Dubran. He was a peer of Matisse, a French painter, and then also the Hudson River School painters, Thomas Cole and Frederick Edwin Church. And for Dubran, I was excited about the riotous colors and the movement in those paintings. And Frederick Edwin Church and Thomas Cole, I loved the way they painted the sky and how it was really expansive and surreal. And here are more works that I was making, just exploring paint and material. The larger one is supposed to be a canyon, and I wanted it to feel claustrophobic, like these boulders were encroaching on you. And these were the last paintings that I made when I was in school, taking a more abstract direction and thinking in abstract language. And I was using colored pencil and markers and spray paint and all different materials to make these. And I finished school, and I was invited to paint a mural with my studio mate at the time, Lindsay Kircher. She's a figurative painter. And this was our drawing that we made to paint the mural. And she painted the figures, and I developed this landscape around them. And this was a really great opportunity and such a learning curve to paint a mural without ever learning. It's really great that you have a mural painting class here. I'm very jealous. But this was our sketch. And this is just like in progress shots and how it came to be. It was very freehand. And this was the final product. And it was in a coffee shop, so we wanted to depict that at the time. And sort of after this was my last big project of school. I was really thinking about what I wanted to do next, how I could sustain my studio practice. That's all I really wanted to do. I just wanted to make art. So I turned to a lot of these resources to apply to things. They're great if you haven't heard of them. Definitely check them out. I was applying to all kinds of residencies and open calls, trying to figure out what my next move was. I was also reading these books that are also fabulous resources. Art and Work by Heather Darcy Bandari and Jonathan Melber, and Living and Sustaining a Creative Life by Sharon Loudon. And they just talk about how to build your life around being an artist and different paths you can take and different ways to make it work. So I was applying to all these opportunities, and I was accepted into a residency program at Open Wabi in Fredericktown, Ohio, which is not too far from here, I think. And this residency was really exciting because it was my first one, and also it was 2 weeks, so I could really see if I liked this lifestyle in this intense environment. And for those of you who don't know what a residency is, it's basically an artist retreat where you make work and live with artists and really have this focus on your practice. And Open Wabi was, I think there was 2 buildings. One was a train depot, and the other one was a furniture factory from the 1900s. And that environment was really inspiring. Once again, I started taking photos, thinking about how the landscape was intersecting with the architecture of the buildings, and making work in response to that. And these are photos from kind of the grounds of the residency. And this is a painting that I made while I was there. I started to install my paintings in different parts of the residency area, and taking pictures and painting on the wall to create this installation. And here's another installation that I made. As you can see, there's more geometric forms coming into the work. I'm thinking about architecture and man-made structures, and also nature. And here's a close-up, kind of connecting the paintings visually with this paint on the brick. And at that time, I was looking at the work of Carrie Moyer, who is a fabulous acrylic painter based in New York, and she makes these large paintings. There's a lot of biomorphic forms and innovative use of acrylic paint. I was also looking at Shar Hughes and David Hockney, and thinking about landscape painting in a more contemporary way. And obviously these are very different from the Hudson River School paintings that I was looking at earlier, but I think there's still a grandness to these works. And after that, I knew I wanted to go to another residency, but a lot of residencies aren't free, and you have to pay a residency fee. You have to pay for transportation to get there. Sometimes you have to pay for your meals, and that adds up. And as an artist right out of school, you're probably not selling work. You're probably not showing at a gallery a lot. So I worked a ton for about 6 months. I was a waitress, and that picture is a picture of the drawings that I would make while I was not busy at work. I was teaching summer camp to kids. I was giving private lessons and working all the time so I could do another residency. And that my studio practice changed a lot. It wasn't as focused as I would have liked it to be, but I knew that it would pay off after I would go to my residency. So I worked for about 6 months, and I saved up to go to Iceland for a residency for 4 months. I took this photo. I lived right in that little village by the water for 4 months, and there were about 200 people in the village and 8 artists, and the closest grocery store was like an hour away. It was a really intense experience, but really amazing, and it changed my work so much. And the purpose of this residency was to provide emerging artists a place for expression, a place to meet other creative people, and engage in a collaborative community. And this was our studio building. It was in an old fish factory. And there was a big market crash in Iceland in 2005. So 32 people in the town were laid off, which is a large amount of people for a town of 200 people. And artists came in and took over this space to bring culture and income and jobs to the town, which is pretty cool. And this was my little studio. It was a big shared studio, and I worked in there with artists from all over the world. And I was going on walks a lot, again, and that became a large part of my practice. I would go on a few walks a day at different times of day and take pictures of the landscape. And I was thinking a lot about the sky and the layers of the landscape. I was living in a fjord, which is basically two mountain ranges lining water, and clouds would be trapped in the fjord. And it was really interesting the way they would layer and move throughout the day. And also the colors, of course, were really inspiring. And I started to take more pictures, and I was conscious of the composition and the shapes and the patterns in the landscape, and I was thinking a lot about that. And I started to make paintings that look like this. They became much more layered. There were a lot of transparent layers. I was thinking about texture and using different tools to paint. I couldn't bring a lot of material with me to the residency, so I became really innovative with painting tools, using brooms and rags and sticks and nets to make these textures on the paintings. I also began to make little environments out of ceramics. These are pretty small. You could hold them in your hand. I'm kind of reinventing the landscape of Iceland. Here's another one. I was thinking about all the fishing nets and the wires and all the equipment tangled outside of the studio. Here's another one. This one's one piece, and then there's these fragments scattered about. And after my residency, I loved the residency lifestyle, and I wanted to keep going to different residencies and being around artists, but I couldn't afford to do that all the time. So I started to apply to residencies for a job. And I applied to so many things, and I ended up getting an internship at the Wassaic Project in upstate New York. It's in the Hudson Valley, and it's an artist residency and a 7-story gallery in that tall building that you see, and it's also an education center. And it's basically a large nonprofit organization that collaborates with the community and is a big resource in the community. And this was where I would hang out during my internship. It was called the Art Nest, and I would work with kids. And I try to be aware of everything that I'm consuming and doing and seeing in my life, and I want that to feed into my work. And my education internship really impacted the way I was making work. I started taking pictures like this, these different games we'd play with the kids, or works of art that we would make in the snow, and that really inspired me. And I was also thinking about my childhood and kind of the toys and crafts I grew up with in the early 2000s, late 90s, and thinking about those colors and shapes. I was reading a lot at the time. I was reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Jules Verne, and I really fell in love with Italo Calvino. And all of these books are really fantastical and magical, and I was using those descriptions in my paintings to make new worlds. And I was looking more at different abstract painters, Elizabeth Murray, Mary Heilman, and Jonathan Lasker. And these painters emerged in the wake of minimalism and pop art and color field painting. And I was really excited about these works. And after all of that influence in that time, I started to make paintings that look like this. Very playful and colorful and punchy. I grew up as a dancer, and I think a lot about choreography and composition. I think they're very similar. And in these paintings, I want the viewer to move around the painting, but also through the layers of the painting. In the one with the lines, almost like the tally marks, that's sort of a nod to Henri Matisse's cutout paintings that he made later in his career. Here are some more paintings exploring texture and material and different ways of painting. And more paintings I was making at the time. I was thinking a lot about framing devices as a way to carve space or have agency over the space that you were painting. So I was painting a lot of works with frames, like the one on the left, and the one on the right was inspired by a book that I had read, and kind of the descriptions in that book. And drawing became a huge part of my practice as I was painting abstract paintings and learning this abstract language that I was using. I have about 100 of these drawings, and they're pretty quick, but I use them as resources to find shape and color, and I'll pull them out if I'm stuck on a painting as a reference. And after my internship, I loved Wasaic so much, and they had another opening for a job that I applied for. It was a programming fellowship, a year long, and they gave me a studio and housing and a stipend, so it was really perfect. I could focus on my art and live with artists, but also have income. And the job was so fun. It was really exciting. I was organizing all these really strange events. This was a benefit that I planned in New York City to raise money for the nonprofit. This was right before COVID in February. I also spearheaded this Halloween celebration. It used to be inside, and we transformed that tall building into a haunted house, but we wanted to make it COVID safe, so we invited artists to come and decorate floats on tractor trailers and trucks. The community is super rural, and everyone's a farmer and pretty blue collar. So it was a nice kind of bringing together of the people in the community and all the artists. These were some floats. One artist was really into taxidermy and taxidermied that coyote. And another artist was a puppeteer and made this human-sized puppet costume. It was super strange and really fun. And kind of the last big event I did was I planned this bingo fundraiser in the pandemic, where you would come in your car, and we projected bingo hosts on the side of the wall. And it was just a fun, weird fundraiser event for artists in the community. And this is a photograph of my studio at the time. It was in an old auction barn where they would auction livestock. So it was in like a pen that livestock would be held. And I started to respond a lot to the architecture of that space. And I was thinking about shelves and cubbies and installing my work in different ways. I was looking to American assemblage artists Joseph Cornell and Louise Nevelson, and how kind of the containment of an object elevates the meaning of the object and makes it seem important and also nostalgic. I was also looking at old illustrations of cabinets of curiosity. I had a really fun time looking through all of these illustrations. And I started to make work like this, building shelves for my paintings and thinking how a painting could be functional or have a purpose other than being something you look at. I was drilling shelves into the paintings and thinking about the ceramics as almost offerings to the paintings, or thinking of them as a collection. Here's another one. This one is sort of an optical illusion when you look at it head on. You can't really tell that there's shelves, and then you see the side of it. And I was playing with optics in that way. And then I started to actually build boxes as the painting. And this one was inspired by game pieces and playground structures. This one honored my failed ceramics that smashed in the kiln. I wanted to sort of honor them and celebrate them and give them more meaning. And this one, I titled it A Place to Rest. I was thinking a lot about shelves and cabinets and boxes as something that lives in a domestic setting, so I wanted to wallpaper this one with my drawings. So it was wallpapered with cut up drawings. And all of the ceramics are mobile, and that's really important to me because I'm thinking about games and collections, and I want you to be able to move them around, and I want them to exist in different iterations. And this is the last painting I made in that series. And I wanted a painting to act as a shelf, so I combined two paintings, and then objects were resting on the other painting. And after all of this time, that was about a year of work, I knew I wanted to go on to another residency, and the pandemic was easing up, so I started to apply to more opportunities and working a ton of jobs again to pay for that residency. So I was an art assistant for Carl Dalvia. He's a sculptor in Connecticut, and that's his mushroom sculptor that I was kind of perfecting before I went to a show. I was teaching art camps and doing freelance art classes with kids. I was doing some art handling, wrapping those sculptures that were going to a show in New York. I was archiving work for an artist for his foundation. I learned to fire a kiln. I was firing a kiln for another artist, and I was babysitting alpacas, which is like the best job ever, and they're so cute. And after all of this, I went to Portugal just this past June at Pata Studios in Barreiro. And that picture was about 30 minutes away from my studio. And the other picture is me in my studio during a group critique with the other residents. A lot of that work is actually in the show here. And Portugal became super important to the work that I was making at the time. Once again, I was walking and exploring and taking photos, thinking about tiles and windows, light, color, shapes. Some of these pictures were also taken in Spain right after my trip. Here are more photos from the grounds of the residency, thinking about similar things. Some more studio shots, once again, of the work that I was making for the show here. This was like one of the biggest studios I've ever had. It was amazing, and it opened up to all the other studios. And while I was there, I was seeing a lot of art, and I was introduced to the work of Maria Helena Vieira da Silva, who was a Portuguese artist. And her work is about cities and grids in cities. She grew up visiting a lot of different cities and traveling, which was really exciting to me because traveling is really important to me in my practice. And I was really inspired by these works. I was also revisiting the work of Hilma af Klint. I was reading Dune at the time, which is a science fiction novel, and thinking about all of these things while I was in Portugal. And I started to make work that looked like this. In this painting, Something So Far Away, I was thinking about light, and I wanted the light to shine through the painting, but also paint in the light in the direction of the light. So I used this found pigment on the grounds of the residency to make that wash in the back, and then I painted on top of it. And this painting is in a similar vein of working with light and thinking about light. And this flower shape is a direct reference to the tiles of Portugal. I was also working on this long-term project of world building and building this environment and world out of ceramic. And I was making larger sculptures, the pink one and the orange one and the purple one, and thinking about beacons of light or plants growing and thinking about hope and renewal. And I was also working on this series. I call it the Atlas series. Hilma af Klimp's show at the Guggenheim a few years back was called Paintings for the Future, and I really love that title. And I was thinking about making maps or guides for the future, these bright paintings that could guide us through hardship, and thinking about the grid and light and color. And during all this time, I was commissioned to do a mural as soon as I arrived back in the States. So I planned out my whole mural while I was in Portugal, and I was sketching every day, taking my sketchbook everywhere and thinking of ideas. And I came home and painted this mural. And it's in State College, Pennsylvania at the Wascom Family Gallery. And it's in a really interesting space. And I think I have a video I can show you. But this is me painting. But I wanted to respond to the architecture of the space because I had been thinking a lot about architecture. So I wanted to use colors that already were existing in the space. You can't really tell, but the carpet has some red in it and grays. And I wanted it to curve around and sprawl through the space. And I'm thinking a lot about architecture and forms and tiles and patterns that I saw in Portugal at the time. This is me painting at the speed of lightning. I used cardboard stencils to draw out this whole thing. And I didn't want to use a sketch. I wanted it to come alive kind of sporadically. Okay. And this is a detail shot. It kind of shows how I used the shapes in the architecture and was responding to the architecture. And that was kind of the last project that I was working on, the mural project. And currently I'm back to painting, and I've been really missing my fellowship and engaging with art in a different way. I wanted another creative outlet, so I started writing for the Bunker Review, which is an art publication affiliated with Bunker Projects in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is a really great residency program. And I'm writing articles about their artists in residence right now. They'll be published soon, so check them out. And before I end today, I wanted to share some extra resources for you, especially those of you who are graduating or seniors. I feel like graduating from art school is kind of scary, and it takes a while to get your footing. And these are great places to meet other creatives, live with them, find studio space with them. And then the New York City Crit Club, if you haven't heard of it, is this awesome critique group. I was a member of it for a few years. And it's just a way to meet other creative people, practice talking about your work, build your portfolio, and just engage with art outside of school in that way. And that is it. Thank you so much. And you can ask me questions if you want, or you can email me your questions if you don't want to ask them.
I can start out. So the residencies that you did were competitive, or not competitive, but yeah, I guess. So you had to submit a portfolio, so there was no guarantee that you would be accepted into those. Is that correct?
Yes, it's an application with a portfolio and different statements and also a statement of purpose. So I had to specifically state why I wanted to go to that residency and what that residency could do for me and my work.
And did you have to talk about what you plan to do here?
Yes, I had to talk about my plans and kind of give them a few paragraphs about what I wanted to do there. I didn't think I followed any of those plans, to be honest. But yes, that was a part of the application.
So how did you get your first opportunity as a professional in the art world working? So what was the first one you did?
The first one, I started as an intern at the Wasaic Project.
Okay, so what was that application process?
That was a Google search on one of the artist websites and apply. I have an ongoing list of everything I've ever applied to since I graduated. It's like at 90 in everything that I've been rejected and accepted into, and I've been accepted to 15 opportunities, and I've applied to 90. So that kind of shows that you have to be really persistent and to not be discouraged.
But once you had one or two, did you then start getting accepted to more because you had those previous
Yes.
experiences?
Yes. And I think the best thing about artists, and at least the art community that I'm in, is that everyone's looking out for each other. A lot of opportunities that I've had are just from friends connecting me. And yeah.
Do most of the residencies that you went to, were everyone like doing similar things like painting or drawing or sculpture?
No, it was so different.
Same thing?
Yeah. The last one I went to was pretty painting heavy, the one in Portugal. But in Iceland, people were welding and building things outside and making videos. There was a dancer, which I think is really exciting to learn more about that outside of school.
That reference, if you ever, there's like this whole gymnastic TV show that was based on the spigot, and one of the girls ended up breaking her back, and her coach was teaching her how to incorporate dance moves into gymnastics, and it actually turned a beautiful work of art. He made her whole like paint models, and the way she moved around, it was really cool.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
So that's actually a really good way to look at stuff, is like the movement people made, and like you'd evolve through
How that would look
what
as
you're in.
art. Yeah. Yeah, I think working with people in different disciplines, especially at the residencies, like I've never had a dancer critique my paintings. It was a totally different perspective that I've never had in school. So it was definitely a plus. Yeah?
How did you get that mural opportunity while you're in this portrait?
Once again, that was a professor that I had in college, just like messaged me on Instagram. So I feel like once you kind of put yourself out there, things will happen. My friend just says you just need one person to believe in you, and then things happen.
Did you use a spray paint?
I used acrylic paint.
Okay.
Acrylic paint and rollers.
So like, I do stuff, and then like it's bothering me because brush stroke is showing up. Don't you get bothered? Because it's pretty flat area.
Not really. I'm probably not as, I don't know, particular.
How much time do you spend doing that kind of stuff as part of your studio practice? You researching jobs, researching residencies. That's like a part-time job in and of itself. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely. It comes in waves. I feel like this summer I've been totally slammed and kind of not on my game. But definitely, like every week, I'm looking for opportunities.
Recommend trying multiple social medias, find some opportunities, and just putting out your work and just getting
a huge social media fan. I think it's great. I think it's a great way to meet artists. And a lot of my friends, art friends I've met on Instagram, and then I've met them in real life. I think it's great.
Have you ever considered using different material for some of your paintings, like working on wood or leather or stuff like that?
Not really. I like working on canvas. I've worked on shaped panel before, but I always come back to the rectilinear structure.
I feel like, because some of your works, I think actually would be really, really cool prints for fabric, which can, like, if you just do the basic fabric print and hand it off to someone who is in fashion,
Uh-huh.
it'd be a wonderful collaboration.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've been thinking about mono printing. I think that would be exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next?
So I'm writing this article, and I'm about to move to New York and start my master's program at Hunter College. And I am working for an artist estate in New York City. So that is what's next. Yeah?
So, when you get artist block, or if you ever get artist block, like, what's your favorite thing to do to, like, recharge and, like, get back into what you're doing?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in artist block.
Okay. I can see that in a way, because you could be inspired by so many things, but
I think my ceramics have really developed. Maybe that has like developed out of artist block. If I need a break from painting, I'll go to ceramics, or I'll draw. And having like various disciplines that I'm working in.
It's like you're constantly doing stuff, right? So, like, either, like you said, drawing or.
Yeah, I keep a
So
sketchbook.
you just sort of work through things.
Uh-huh.
Which leads me to another question. Of the paintings you showed in any given situation, how many bad ones were there that you consider failures that you didn't show us?
This is pared down. I don't put my failed paintings on my website, and I would say there's 50% of my work is on my website.
Well, that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you set short-term and long-term goals for like places that you want to show your art, or like goals for making money off of your art?
Yes. Yeah.
Are those goals that are like frequently changing? Like, do you feel like tied to them? Are you flexible?
I honestly do it like every 6 months, and I think they always change. There's like always room for growth, and yeah, I think goal setting is really great. Even if it's like small, like I just want to sell one work this year to like a stranger. I feel like that's really cool. That someone you don't even know loves your work and wants to own it. Like that's a big enough goal.
I guess that's leading to another question, because there's obviously a market for different kinds of art, and for people to have access to like categories of specifically like your work, whether it's like a private collection or something that's you have like multiple of that you're selling. I guess it's like I'm trying to understand of like how do you make sense of what you're going to price your work for, and almost like you're having a contract with somebody, you know?
Yeah, I've actually this is a learning curve for me right now. I started working with a gallery in Pittsburgh and have no idea how to price my work. In the book that I showed, the yellow one, it tells you everything you need to know about it. I've been referencing it a lot. And I don't really know how to answer your question. It's really hard.
Study books.
Yeah, it's really hard. Ask people, especially as you grow. Right now, I don't have gallery representation. I'm not selling a ton of work. So my prices aren't like fluctuating crazy. So I just always kind of ask the gallery, like, what do you think? Yeah.
Going off of that, do you think that it's best to do like the minimum pricing, like how much did my material cost and then how long I took doing X amount?
I know people.
$10 an hour and taking 20 hours to make this.
I know people who break it down super practical like that. Like my material costs this, my labor costs this, and adding that up, and then galleries take 50%, so then doubling that. Or there's some people do it super mathematical. Some people have told me if you think about it in terms of your inventory. If I have 20 paintings and 10 sell, I should increase my prices for my next body of work that I'm making. If I have 20 paintings and 1 sells, maybe I shouldn't increase my price, and think about it as like supply and demand. But I'm no expert. I'm just learning all of this. Mm-hmm.
How did you come to deciding on New York for your master's? Was it anything in particular? Was it just getting accepted? Was it like, were you set on New York in particular and Hunter?
Yeah.
Because I'm a junior in undergrad and I don't even know where to start looking for like grad school because they're like all over. Like I don't even know how to begin.
Yeah. So I just went through this process this past winter. And I was only looking at programs that were really affordable and or free. Because a lot of the fancier art schools are so ridiculously expensive. And I didn't think it was worth it. And Hunter's really great because it's in Manhattan, like in Tribeca, and it's a public school. So I'll be paying in-state tuition, which is really great. And that was sort of the big thing for me while choosing that school. And also I had been living in upstate New York for the past 2 years, and I just love New York City. I think you can live anywhere as an artist, I really do. But I think if you go to an opening in New York, like the best people are there. It's amazing. But yeah, that's why I chose there.
Do you prefer rural areas to create art or urban?
Rural areas, you have space, and that's like the most important asset that you can have as an artist.
Yeah.
You know,
That's because it seems like you experience both urban and rural.
yeah, you have space. So it depends. Thanks, guys.